Thank you. I thought that was a great talk. So now I'm very excited to introduce TS Anil. Thank you so much, the CEO of Monzo. Hello. Thank you very much for coming. I asked TS a few minutes ago how he feels about public speaking and how often he does it, and he said basically that you do less than your team would like, but more than you wish you had to. So I really appreciate you making time for this.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Connie.
So if you want to maybe, I just wanted to kind of go over your background really quickly. You know, you have had 25 years of retail banking experience before joining Monzo. You held high-level positions at several major financial institutions, including Visa, global head of payment products and platforms, Standard Chartered Bank, Citigroup, Capital One. You joined to sort of lead its initiative in the U.S. In 2022? 2020. Okay, great. And now you are obviously in charge of the whole enchilada. You are a very big deal here in the UK. There's a lot of excitement around this company. There's a lot of excitement about a potential IPO, which I'm going to have to ask you about later. But in the meantime, in the US, it is a different story. People don't yet really know Monzo, is my impression. So how much does that matter to you?
Sure. So, I mean, by the way, I think we're a big deal on the other side of the pond as well. You're wearing our colors. The backdrop here is the Monzo hot coral color, so I'm thinking maybe there's hope. Look, it's a great question. We are homegrown here in the UK. We've achieved enormous scale and success over here. 1 in 5 people in the UK, 1 in 5 adults in the UK banks with Monzo. And of course, it's the right question to say, well, like, what happens when we cross borders and what changes? There's a few other things that define our story here in the UK that might be worth highlighting as I then take it to the US. So the first is that we built this in a way that was built very, very intimately with customers. And customer centricity is kind of the worst jargon word to use over here. So it's really customer intimacy in how we build, how we learn from customers. And the result of all of that has been a product-led growth story. So even today, where we added, I don't know, 300,000 new users last month in the month of April alone here in the UK, over 2/3 of those came to Monzo organically through word of mouth. Right? So that story, which is product-led growth, is at the heart of what we do. So now then the right question is, so what happens when we cross the border and we're now in the US, and how will we grow in the US? I think there's a few universal truths which will apply, Connie. The first is that whichever geography you look at in the world, all of the user research that we have done speaks to the fact that most people feel anxiety about their money. And that anxiety is independent of affluence level. The kind of problem definition changes a little bit, but people are anxious about their money. So that holds true everywhere you go. The second thing that holds true is that the incumbent industry, the banking industry, has been built off of arbitraging customers, right? Leveraging, in some fashion, most of the revenues get made out of leveraging a customer's ignorance, i.e. they don't really understand the product, their vulnerability, lend to customers who are willing to borrow at high interest rates, as an example, or sheer ignorance, right? Or an inertia. So you package all of that stuff up, and those things hold true. So now in the US, and I moved here from Palo Alto, California, by the way, right? So in the US, that same insight holds, right? There's 150 million Americans that live paycheck to paycheck. Most people don't really have the tools to budget and actually make sense of their money, and that relationship that people have with their money is broken. Those are the insights we will build from, right? So we're already in the US, as you probably know. We have a small team that's building product market fit for the US, and those insights are helping us create the best features that will make sense in the US, and that's the way we intend to double down. And it's all kind of sounds axiomatic, so maybe it's useful to talk about what we won't do as well. Right? What we will not do, which a lot of the US fintech industry has done, is take a mediocre product and fuel it with CAC dollars. Right? Fuel it with marketing. That's not what we're going to be about. We're going to focus on building the right product, learn from customers, and then build the journey, but we're playing the long game.
So tell me, it's really interesting to think that, did you say 75% of your customers last month came organically?
2/3, yeah.
2/3. So that's really great. I have heard from friends here that, young people in particular, their college-age children love Monzo, very attached to the brand. Tell me a little bit about how you pulled that off and how you do reach what seems to be maybe primarily younger customers, or maybe that's not even the case.
That's certainly not the case. I mean, we win disproportionate share in the younger demographics, as you would expect. But like any digital adoption curve, The customers that you get early on tend to be younger and more digitally savvy. The median age of our customer base, by the way, which is like 12 million customers, the median age is 34. Right, so half the customers are on the other side of that age, right? So we're playing to be a universal bank in the UK. But to your question about, so we started out by building for the younger tech-savvy demographic. And what that does is it establishes a few things, right? It makes you solve problems in a very, very tech-centric sort of way. It makes you build features and products that need to be intuitive for people that are new to money. And so you build it in a certain way, number one. Number two, I think what happens is that it informs the brand. And I don't mean brand in the sense of the advertising strategy, of course that, but that's a tiny part of what we do. But brand defined as the tone of voice, how we communicate with our customers, the playfulness of it, the magical aspects of our design, right? So it anchors that, in the strategy. And like my point about the adoption curve was, it feels like those things only appeal to young people, but actually they don't. Right? Simplicity of design, magical experiences actually appeal across the spectrum. So wherever you start, right, the end game is what we're playing for. And so, it's great to be perceived as a younger brand because it implies a certain energy, it implies a certain playfulness, it implies a certain way of getting to customers, but really that is for everybody. And we have hundreds of customers in the 90s who bank with Monzo. Last I checked, there were 2 customers, more than 100 who were banking with Monzo, and someone asked me the question of, what? Like, why do they need Monzo? I'm like, dude, anybody that wanted to simplify their money, anybody that wants to make sense of their money, we're right for. So it's not just a young person thing.
So it's really interesting. I do think when you're a young brand, it's easier to pull in young people. It's novel. That novelty is hard to maintain over time. And obviously you're scaling, and it's great that you've got a couple of centurions that are using the product. I'm just wondering, how do you kind of maintain that sort of sense of freshness over time as you scale?
Yeah, so, I don't like the word novelty only because it implies some version of gimmickiness, right? So that's certainly not who we are. But the freshness aspect of it, right, is anchored around a couple of things. It's anchored around this desire to build everything close to a customer and solve real problems for them, and solve it using the best of technology and the best of design to make the experience magical as well. Now, if you keep that as the core ethos of what we're building, then everything you build is held to that promise. So the freshness is not about gimmickiness. The freshness is, oh, this problem of mine got solved in a delightful and exciting and useful way. I'll give you an example. So we launched our investment product about 18 months ago. All of the user research that we did about the product said that, particularly in the UK, most people keep their money in cash. It's a very savings-rich country, under-indexed on investments. And the 2 big reasons for that: one, people felt that investing is only for rich people. And the second was they were spooked in that they didn't understand how to get started, right? The regulatory backdrop had created a context where every place you went to invest basically surfaced a brick wall of terms and conditions for you, right? So sophisticated people got advice, sophisticated people found ways to invest, but the average person on the streets was just not investing. So we took those insights when we were building the product, right? And the product was built to sort of take down both of those challenges, right? So we said you can start investing with as little as £1, right? So democratize that completely, number one. And number two, we said, let's educate people on what does investing mean. So what is an ETF? What's a mutual fund? How do you think about yield? How do you understand risk? And simplified that. Now, if that's what we're doing, and we're delivering that to the customer using the best of technology, the best experiences, and communicating in a way that customers want to understand their money, then the problem I'm not seeking to solve is how do I keep it fresh, right? Because it's not about the next gimmick. It's about the next problem I'm solving, and do it in a way that lives true to all of the rest of the ethos of the product and brand.
How do you feel about the term robo-advisory, and is that sort of applicable to the business that you're talking about?
I mean, that means different things to different people. It has a specific context in a regulatory sense as well. How do I feel about it? I think the world is going to go to a place where customers should be able to access information on their terms, right? Advice has a specific legal and regulatory connotation. Robo does not. Robo just implies algorithmic and delivered technologically. And of course, those are things we will do, right? As we think about the power of technology in delivering to a customer what is relevant to them, right, in language that they understand, and in ways that are personalized for what they are solving for, right? You can put any sort of packaging around it, but that's the heart of what we're solving. That's the core of our mission, which is making money work for everyone.
And also tell me, in terms of, again, you're in a position, you've grown tremendously, you've turned the company profitable, congratulations. I am wondering where you want to take this company in terms of your offerings. I mean, will we see sort of like non-financial offerings? What's on the roadmap? What have you?
Sure, great question. So maybe I'll answer it in a couple of different arcs over here. The first arc, which is just the size of opportunity ahead of us in the world of fintech and solving for problems of money, right? Transforming people's relationship with money is an extraordinary sized opportunity, right? Less than 2%, right? This was a BCG study from last year. Less than 2% of financial services revenues are met by fintech, right? So the runway in terms of just focusing on transforming that relationship with money, helping customers budget and borrow and spend and save and insure and invest and bring all of their money life together is massive, right? We're just getting started on that journey. All of that said, right, what we've clearly built with our customers is a deep trust model. It's a deep trust relationship. And what that trust gives us the license to do is a heck of a lot more. Right? So I don't even call this an engagement platform, because engagement kind of implies like people engage with TikTok, right? That there is that version of engagement, which is low trust and time in app, right? Whereas in our case, I measure that as a trust platform because it means how often do customers come to Monzo and what are they seeking? What's the way in which they engage with us? What's the trust we've earned? By the way, the average Monzo user is 7 times more likely to use the word love when reviewing us than any other bank. Right? Nobody talks about banking and love together, right? So that platform of trust and love certainly gives us the license to move well past financial services. And in the arc of time, right, the ambition is to meet many, many more needs of customers. But I just know that getting the money part of it right has just so much opportunity that we'd be fools to sort of get distracted by it.
So it's so hard to earn customer trust and so easy to lose it. Obviously, everybody is embracing AI. They have to. They don't have any choice. We saw Klarna say, I think maybe yesterday, that it had maybe over-indexed a little bit too much on AI and mistakes were being made. And it's rehiring human beings to solve those problems. I'm just wondering, tell me a little bit about AI and how you make sure that while I'm assuming you're scaling with it, you're not also introducing new problems for yourself.
Yeah, I think it begins with the question we're seeking to answer, right? We're not going into the world of AI, and we haven't been in the world of AI for the last few years, asking the question of, hey, let's look at what AI can do for Monzo, right? The real question we're seeking to answer is, what can AI do for our customers, right? And as woolly as that reframing sounds, what it forces you to do is make difficult choices and solve harder problems, right? Because for us, this is not just about saying, okay, how many people less can we employ and what can we automate and stuff like that. Of course, we're going to do all of those things and continue to raise the bar on efficiency. But really, this is about taking AI and saying, how do I use AI and build better products that we put in the hands of our customers, right? So to the question earlier about, customization, personalization, all of that, right? AI can help you do those things magically, right? So we're playing the long game with this. For us, this is not about, hey, let's wrap everything that we're doing in an AI narrative and, get eyeballs using that. For us, it is deeply fundamentally how does it actually power the strategy? And to the piece you opened with about easy to hard to build trust and even harder to sort of keep it, bringing the best of tech to the party, right, is core to how we actually build and earn trust. I'll give you a couple of examples of that, right? So we're among the rare players that actually built our own tech stack, and our entire tech stack, is stuff that we built. Of course, it's on the cloud and everything else. But owning that tech stack, right, is mission critical to us because it allows us to deliver resilience and a service quality level in the hands of our customers that we would not be able to do otherwise. We built this thing called Monzo Stand-In, where it basically makes our processors stand in and meet the customer's needs, even if there's a problem or an outage somewhere else. And we've seen that earlier this year. There were significant outages among a bunch of high street banks, but Monzo was there, right? So we use it to drive great resilience. We use it to build features that enhance trust. As an example, impersonation fraud is a pretty big deal, right? People call you and say, I'm calling from Monzo, and can you give us this one-time PIN or give us this password and stuff like that? It's a big deal, right? I'd be surprised if there's nobody in this audience, as sophisticated as this audience is, that hasn't been a victim of it or knows someone that has firsthand. So it's a big deal in the industry. So we built a tool where in the app you can check if it's Monzo calling you. Right? So if you're on your Monzo app and you get a call, and because that's typically how it happens, hey, just go into the app, tell me this, tell me that, can you transfer this, right? Our app will flash to you, we're not calling you, hang up right away. Right? So those are tools that actually build that trust and continue to sort of retain that. So every step of the way, if you put the customer at the heart of what you're trying to build and not the company, that you solve the harder problem that eventually becomes a stickier, longer-term answer.
Can I ask, how are your engineers handling this shift? You're moving so fast. You've got your ambitions to do what you're going to do next. How much time do they have to sort of play with these different LLMs, just to sort of like peel back a layer? Exactly how is that? How are you experimenting, and how modular? It sounds like it's fairly modular, the tech stack you've built, so that they can try, and use the newest features, which are coming out every 5 seconds?
For sure. I mean, the quick answer is, look, it's entirely microservices architected. We ship into production dozens of times a day. So it's entirely modular. So the ability to experiment and, is very, very high, right? So the tech stack enables it. But I think this is not so much about the tech stack, because you can solve for that. But what you really need alongside with that is a sort of a team, an engineering team in this context of your question, right, that is highly curious, that is very, very driven to keep trying stuff. And our best ideas come from people around the company. Yeah, and I'm not just engineers, certainly in the engineering community, but one of our coolest features was built because a customer service rep figured that, gosh, we need to build this gambling block for our customers, because this customer that I'm talking to has a gambling addiction problem, and he topped up his online gambling account at 2 in the morning. And really, if he had blocked his ability to do it, his own ability to do that, we would have protected him, right? So like that idea came out of a customer service rep. 700,000 customers now in the UK have turned on a gambling block feature, and only 10% have ever turned it off, right? So this idea that everybody in the company is empowered and energized by the idea of experimenting and solving for, how you can solve problems for customers allows, it's not just the engineering community, but of course that.
This may sound like a crazy question, but in some ways, so you disrupted the legacy banks. I mean, you're still trying to do that. 2% is a really shocking number. Do you worry about AI native banks? I mean, in some ways, you're becoming a little bit of a legacy player. Is the company 10
Gosh,
years?
no. Gosh, no, we're not a legacy player, and I hope we will never be, right? So, but it's the right challenge, right? How do we make sure that as a workforce, as a tech stack, as a company, as a product, right, we're continuing to operate at the bleeding edge of technology? And yeah, so it doesn't worry me, right? What would worry me would be, if I saw signs of complacence in us as a company, right? Complacence in terms of adopting new technology, or at least the curiosity of it, right? And so on. Right? Those would be like bright, sort of flashing red warning signs for me, but that's the opposite of the company that we are. And so, no, I'm not worried about AI native banks. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think, one other theme over here, Connie, that's really important is that the size of the prize over here is transforming the relationship that people have with money and the extraordinary commercial opportunity that sits around that, right? And the 2% number is a real number. So that's the size of the prize. And I think it's a race between two sides of this industry. The side of it, which is the incumbent banks, and will they get technology? And the side of the tech players, and will they get banking, right? And my bet every day of the week is that the winners in the long term, the winners at scale, are going to be the people that put the best of tech and banking together and can straddle that, right? So we're a bleeding edge technology company, forever building new tech, forever adopting new technologies as they come. But we will also go toe-to-toe with anybody in the world on the banky bits of this business, right? Because you have to be great at both to win at scale.
Tell me quickly, if you can, how you became profitable, and also, now that you are profitable, and I would imagine want to stay profitable, how you're balancing innovation with monetization.
Yeah, so how we became profitable, I think the heart of that answer is with discipline, with making difficult choices when we needed to, and in some weird sense, right? I describe it as the scarcity mindset, right? We were never spending like giddy sailors, right? Even at the peak of like funding, right? We were never spending like that, right? We were never burning dollars marketing. We were never, I've heard, like you hear horror stories of the ways in which different tech companies have spent. That was never us, right? So we stayed true to our knittings, number one. Number two, we were incredibly clear about the business model of what we were building. Right? And this idea that making money work for everyone meant that you build products that meet all of our customers' financial needs, and you therefore build diversified revenues on the back of that are not hostage to the flavor of the season challenge, right? It's not hostage to, hey, crypto is a good wave, or interest rates are going this way, and so you build something that is more sustainable. So we built it by staying focused on all of those things, and we turned profitable. The profitability versus growth trade-off, Connie, that you're asking about, monetization versus growth trade-off, is actually one that I see differently. And in some ways, I think of that as a false binary. And the reason is that's a trade-off if growth implies that you need to burn more money marketing, right? I gave you the number already, right? When 2/3 of your customers are coming to you organically, the trade-off for me is not, should I spend more on marketing or should I take it to the bottom line? Right? But I will continue to invest in new products, right? Get hire smart people, build out new geographies. And blessed to say that we have an extraordinary set of investors who are in this for the long game as well. You're going to hear from one of them right after me. And you'll hear their perspective on this. They're not saying, look, chase a bottom line number, give me this, give me that. We have a cap table that is also playing the long game with us, recognizing the size of this opportunity. So as long as we spend responsibly, I don't think monetization versus growth is really a trade-off.
One quick question. What have you found, I'm just curious, about marketing? What's been the most effective marketing for you?
Authentic, playful. We did this thing last year when we had this big brand campaign here in the UK. And it was just a fun thing that we did, where one of the benefits that you got from the Monzo premium card at the time was a free sausage roll from Greg's. Right? Raise your hand if you're a fan of sausage rolls at Greg. But we actually built this ATM out, right? Which was a sausage roll ATM, and it had a line running like 3 times around the block, right? So being playful with it, but authentic, right? Like it's not about being gimmicky, right? That was a sort of a fun thing we did because there was a feature in the product that allowed for it. But it's about being authentic. It's about being, sticking to a tone of voice that is consistent with who you are and delivering against that promise, right? So. Yeah, lots to say on marketing and brand. I could go on and on, but yeah, being core to it is.
No, that's great. It's just such a crowded market, and to break through as you have, it's pretty remarkable. I did want to ask, of course, before we're out of time, about the IPO. Lots of chatter in the news about Monzo talking to Morgan Stanley bankers for an offering that would value the company at more than £6 billion. I'm not going to ask you if these reports are accurate, because I know you're not going to answer, unless you are going to answer.
To tell someone in the media, right, that don't believe everything you read in the media is kind of like a dicey move to make, but yeah, please don't believe everything you read in the press, right? We will be a great public company one day. We haven't decided either when or where, let alone with whom. So yeah, and let alone at how much, right? Anybody that pretends that they know valuation numbers for whenever we list in the future, right, is writing an article, right? But from our perspective, what we're focused on is really scaling and building the business, right? We've been CAGRing at close to 100% for years now, and we continue to be a high growth company. The thing that I'm focused on is build and scale the business, right? And equity narratives and public market opinions and public market timing will take care of itself.
And how do you feel about sort of, going out in London versus the US?
I don't feel about it right now. It's not a decision we have needed to make. We will make it when we need to make it.
Okay, one more question about this. How do you sort of weigh the benefits of continued private growth versus maybe the visibility that you get from, becoming a publicly traded company? And also, this is for sort of founders out there that are maybe eventually going to.
Look, I think that's always been an interesting question. I think it's become a more interesting question now because you see how much money there is in the private markets. And I get asked that question a lot about, look, why not just stay private? And I think this is a two-part answer, right? There's very, very few consumer-facing companies, right, direct-to-consumer companies that we know of that are at scale, that are great brands anywhere in the world, that are not also public, right? So in some senses, it seems like a rite of passage. It seems like, aspiring to a certain bar of how you operate and so on and so forth, right? So I think the odds are that we will therefore list. right? Having said all of that, I think the second piece of it remains, like we're not in a rush to do this, right? We're incredibly well capitalized, have enormous support from our investors and continued interest in people wanting to, participate in whatever we do or buy secondaries and find a way into participating in Monzo's story. So we're not under pressure to do it. So at the point in time when we feel like, look, we have a decision to make, we should weigh that. And there is certainly an argument that says, why not stay private longer?
But you think it'll be in 2025?
I don't think anything of the sort.
Yes, thank you so much. Really a pleasure to talk to you and get to know more about Monzo. Thank you all.
Thanks, Connie.